The first-class cabin of Sky Airlines Flight 162 was a sanctuary of hushed tones and soft lighting. For 12-year-old Leo, it was a birthday surprise, a world away from the casual chaos of his normal life. He sat by the window, his nose almost pressed against the cool plastic, watching the ground crew with wide-eyed wonder. In the aisle seat, his father, David, was already buried in a financial report, a half-smile on his face as he watched his son's excitement. Their peace was shattered by the click-clack of determined heels. Brenda, a senior flight attendant with a face tightened by years of practice smiles and a sharp, disapproving gaze, stopped at their row. Her eyes, the color of a winter sky, swept over them, lingering on David's relaxed, expensive sweater and Leo's brand-new, limited-edition sneakers. Her expression didn't register luxury. It registered suspicion. "Boarding passes, please," she said, her voice crisp and devoid of warmth. David didn't look up from his report, effortlessly pulling 2 platinum-tier boarding passes from his breast pocket and handing them over. "Thank you." Brenda scanned his pass with a nod. Then she took Leo's. She scanned it. The device beeped its acceptance, but her eyes narrowed. She looked from the pass to Leo, then back again. "Is there a problem?" David asked, finally glancing up, his tone mild but with an undercurrent of steel. "The seat is 2A, first class," Brenda stated, as if explaining something to a child. "I'm aware," David said. "It's his birthday present." Brenda's lips thinned. Unaccompanied minors are not permitted in first class. It's policy. He'll need to be reseated in economy. Leo's face fell. "But my dad is right here." "I need to see your identification, young man," Brenda said, ignoring David and focusing her chilly gaze on Leo. "This boarding pass must be a mistake, or something else." David slowly closed his report. "His passport is in his bag, and there is no mistake. He is my son, and he is sitting with me." Brenda's smile was a cold, brittle thing. "Sir, I deal with people trying to upgrade themselves fraudulently all the time. They use stolen loyalty numbers, photoshopped passes. I've seen it all." She looked pointedly at Leo. "This boy does not look like he belongs in this cabin." The coded language hung in the air, toxic and familiar. "He does not look like he belongs." David's posture shifted from relaxed to rigid. "I suggest you check your passenger manifest again, very carefully." "I don't need to," Brenda snapped, her professional facade cracking to reveal the raw contempt beneath. "I know a scam when I see one. This is a cabin for paying customers, not for children who wandered up from the back." And with a flourish of finality, she ripped Leo's boarding pass in half. The sound was a gunshot in the quiet cabin. She dropped the pieces onto Leo's lap. "Now, you can come with me to economy, or security can escort you off the aircraft. Your choice." Leo looked down at the torn paper, his eyes glistening with humiliated tears. The birthday magic was gone, replaced by a deep, shameful confusion. David did not yell. He did not stand up. He looked at the shredded pass, then at his son's face, and finally at Brenda. The air around him seemed to grow cold. "You have just made a catastrophic error in judgment," he said, his voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, yet it carried through the entire cabin. Dozens of eyes were now glued to the scene, passengers shifting uncomfortably. "Sir, I am following procedure," Brenda said, emboldened by what she saw as her victory. "No," David corrected, his voice gaining a terrifying calm. "You're following prejudice. And you have just traumatized my son on his birthday." He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out not a wallet, but a simple, black smartphone. He pressed a single speed dial number and put the phone to his ear, his eyes locked on Brenda. "Yes, this is David. I'm on 162 at the gate. We have a situation. The senior attendant just destroyed my son's ticket and accused him of fraud. No, do not delay the flight. But I want her removed. Immediately. And I want the head of in-flight operations on the line before we reach cruising altitude." He listened for a moment, his gaze never leaving Brenda's face, which was slowly draining of color. David. The name, the authority in his tone, the immediate response. It was dawning on her that this was not a typical passenger. Who are you?" she stammered, her confidence evaporating. David ended the call. The cockpit door buzzed and opened. The captain, a man with graying temples and a serious expression, emerged and walked straight to their row, bypassing Brenda completely. "Mr. Thorne," the captain said, his voice respectful, almost nervous. "My deepest apologies. We are dealing with this immediately." He turned to Brenda, his face a mask of cold fury. "Attendant Walsh, your services are no longer required on this flight. Gather your personal items and deplane. Now." Brenda stood frozen, the reality of her situation crashing down. Passengers were whispering, some filming on their phones. She had been publicly fired, in front of everyone. "But, Captain, he was..." She sputtered. "The man you just accused of fraud," the captain said, his voice low and venomous, "is David Thorne, as in Thorne, the name on the side of the aircraft. Now get off my plane." The blood drained completely from Brenda's face. She looked at David, the David Thorne, the reclusive billionaire owner of Sky Airlines. And then at Leo, who was still clutching the pieces of his ticket. The magnitude of her mistake was a physical blow. She was let off the plane by a gate agent. Her career in ruins. As the door closed and the plane prepared for departure, Leo finally spoke, his voice small. Does she know now, Dad? Does she know I belong?" David put a comforting arm around his son. "She knows, Leo, but this isn't over. People like her don't learn that easily. They just get angrier." He was right. As the plane soared into the sky, Brenda Walsh was on a phone in the empty jet bridge, her voice shaking not with remorse, but with a furious, self-righteous rage. "You won't believe what just happened," she hissed to her union representative. "I was set up, fired for doing my job. That man got me fired because I caught his kid with a fake ticket. We need to fight this. I want my job back, and I want a public apology." The corporate headquarters of Sky Airlines was a temple of glass and steel, but David Thorne's corner office felt more like a war room. On his tablet, a viral video played, the one of Brenda Walsh being escorted off the plane, her face a mask of what the internet was calling righteous fury. The caption read, "Airline bullying. Worker fired for doing her job." Brenda had not gone quietly. She'd hired a slick PR firm and gone on a media tour, playing the part of the victim with stunning effectiveness. On a popular morning talk show, she sat demurely, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I was just following protocol," she insisted, her voice trembling. The boarding pass seemed irregular. In today's world of identity theft and fraud, we have to be vigilant. But when I questioned it, the passenger, a very powerful man, had me fired on the spot. He didn't show any identification for the boy. He just made a call. She looked directly into the camera, her eyes wide with faux sincerity. Is this the world we want to live in? Where billionaires can destroy a working woman's career with a single phone call because they don't like being asked to follow the rules. The narrative was brilliant and insidious. She had expertly scrubbed the racism from the story, framing it as a class war. The entitled billionaire versus the hard-working employee. The comment sections were a battleground. Hashtag I Stand With Brenda was trending. David's head of PR, a sharp woman named Anya, summarized the damage. "She's good, David. She's turned this into a story about power and privilege, not prejudice. Our internal polls show a 15% drop in customer confidence. The board is getting nervous." "They're nervous?" David asked, his voice dangerously calm. "A woman racially profiled my son, and they're nervous about the stock price." "In their world, it's the same thing," Anya replied bluntly. "We need to release security footage from the cabin. It is audio. It's the only thing that will prove her lies." David shook his head. "I will not release a video of my son's humiliation to the court of public opinion. That footage is for our lawyers in a real court, if it comes to that." Meanwhile, Brenda's campaign escalated. Her union filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against Sky, demanding $10 million in damages and her job back. They claimed David Thorne had created a hostile and volatile environment. The story was picked up by international news. The pressure was immense. At a shareholder meeting, David was confronted by a major investor, David, this is a distraction. The stock is down. Perhaps a quiet settlement? Get this woman to sign an NDA and make this go away. David stood firm. We will not settle. To settle is to admit she was right to do what she did. It tells every other Brenda Walsh in my company that their behavior is negotiable. It tells my son that his dignity has a price tag. The answer is no. But Brenda had one more card to play. A notorious tabloid, known for its sensationalist stories, published an exclusive expose. The headline was brutal. Or Sky airs shady past. A history of trouble? The article was a masterpiece of character assassination. It quoted anonymous sources from Leo's private school, suggesting he was a disruptive student with behavioral issues who had been asked to leave his previous school. It painted a picture of a spoiled, problematic child, implying that Brenda's vigilance was, in fact, justified. Leo saw the article shared by a schoolmate. He came home from school and went straight to his room, refusing to come out for dinner. That was the final straw. David's protective fury, once a control flame, was now a wildfire. He called Anya and his head of security. That's it. The gloves are off, he said, his voice like ice. I try to handle this with dignity. She has now targeted my son directly. I want a full, deep-dive investigation into Brenda Walsh. I want to know everything. Who are her friends? What are her politics? What does she post on her private social media? I want to know if she's ever so much as jaywalked. The investigation began with the efficiency that only vast resources can buy. And within 48 hours, they hit pay dirt. Brenda Walsh was not just a prejudiced woman having a bad day. She was an active member of several closed online heritage preservation groups, a polite term for white nationalist forums. She had a history of posting vile racist memes and rants under a pseudonym. But that wasn't the bombshell. David's security chief laid a grainy photograph on his desk. It was a still from a security camera at a political rally from 2 years prior. It showed Brenda Walsh, her face clear as day, not as a bystander, but standing alongside members of a known extremist group, holding a sign with a hateful slogan. This changes everything. Anya breathed, her eyes wide. It does, David said, a cold, hard smile finally touching his lips. She wanted a public fight. She's about to get one. David Thorne stared at the photograph on his desk. The clear image of Brenda Walsh standing shoulder to shoulder with extremists at a rally. It was a silver bullet. Releasing this would instantly vaporize her victim narrative and expose her for the bigot she was. Prepare a press release, David instructed Anya, his voice cold and decisive. We release this at 9 a.m. tomorrow. No commentary, just a photo and a caption. The true character of the woman who accused Leo Thorne of fraud. But as Anya turned to leave, David's head of security, a former Special Forces officer named Carter, entered the office. His expression was grim. Sir, we have a problem, Carter said, placing a tablet on the desk. Brenda Walsh has disappeared. She vacated her apartment last night. Her phone is off the grid, and she's not acting alone. On the tablet was a screenshot from an encrypted messaging channel. The username Sky Sentry had posted, Asterisk, the target is preparing to strike. The Eagle must be grounded. All units, prepare for Operation Fallen Sky. Asterisk, Operation Fallen Sky? David asked, a chill running down his spine. We've been monitoring chatter from these heritage groups since we uncovered Brenda's affiliations, Carter explained. This is bigger than one disgruntled employee. They've adopted her as a martyr. Sky Sentry is their inside man. We believe it's a current Aura Sky employee feeding them information. The Eagle is you, sir. Grounded likely means a direct physical or financial threat. The game had changed entirely. This was no longer a PR battle. It was a coordinated attack. We have to cancel the press release, Anya said, her face pale. If we provoke them now, we don't know what they'll do. No, David countered, his jaw set. Retreating only makes them stronger. We change tactics. We use this as bait. He turned to Carter. Can we trace this Sky Sentry? We're trying. The traffic is routed through multiple offshore servers. It's sophisticated. The next 24 hours were a high-stakes chess game. David deliberately leaked word through a corporate channel that damning evidence against Brenda was being finalized for release. They were laying a trap, hoping to force Sky Sentry to make a move. The move came, but not as expected. Leo was at his elite private school, St. Ignatius Academy. During a free period, he was in the library when a man in an Sky Airlines maintenance uniform approached him. Leo Thorne, the man asked, his voice friendly, "Your father sent me. There's a family emergency. I need to take you to him immediately." Leo, a smart and cautious boy, felt a jolt of alarm. His father had drilled into him a strict protocol. No one ever picks you up without the secret code phrase. "What's the password?" Leo asked, taking a step back. The man's friendly demeanor vanished. "Don't be difficult, kid. Your dad's waiting." He reached for Leo's arm. Just then, Coach Miller, the basketball coach who had been briefed by Carter, stepped out from between the bookshelves. "Is there a problem here?" The man in the uniform immediately released Leo, muttered an apology, and hurried away. By the time school security was alerted, he had vanished from campus. When David received the call, his blood ran cold. They had gone after his son. The war was now at his doorstep. Back at Sky headquarters, Carter's team had a breakthrough. By analyzing the digital footprint of the leaked family emergency tip-off, they triangulated Sky Sentry. The traitor wasn't a low-level employee. It was Mark Renshaw, the director of flight operations, a man David had trusted for 15 years, a man with high-level security clearance and access to David's personal flight itineraries and family details. Confronted in his office, Renshaw didn't deny it. He was eerily calm. "You're destroying this company, David. Your weak, multicultural policies are diluting our brand. Sky was built on tradition and excellence. You're turning it into a floating bus. So you align with a hate group to what? Stage a coup?" David asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Brenda Walsh is a symbol," Renshaw sneered. "A symbol of the silent majority in this company who are tired of watching you prioritize diversity over quality. Operation Fallen Sky isn't about hurting your son. It's about saving this airline from you." Carter's phone buzzed. He listened, his face hardening. He looked at David. "Sir, we just intercepted a new communication. The plan has been accelerated. They're not waiting. They're going to execute phase 2 tonight." Renshaw smiled, a thin, triumphant curl of his lips. "You're too late. The Eagle will be grounded by morning. The board will have no choice but to remove you." David grabbed Renshaw by his suit jacket. "What is phase 2? Renshaw just kept smiling. "You'll see. And when you do, you'll wish you'd just given that woman her job back." The interrogation of Mark Renshaw yielded nothing more. He was a true believer, sitting in a secure holding room with a smug, defiant silence that was more terrifying than any confession. The phrase phase 2 echoed in David's mind, a ticking bomb with an unknown countdown. "Phase 2 could be anything," Carter said, his voice tight as they stood in the situation room, a wall of screens displaying Sky's global operations. "A cyber attack on our flight control systems, a physical bomb threat, a coordinated smear campaign to crash our stock. Or all of the above," David replied, his eyes scanning the data streams. "They want to create chaos, to make the board think I've lost control." He made a decision. "I'm grounding the fleet." Anya, his PR head, gasped. "David, you can't. Grounding the entire Sky fleet without a public reason would cause mass panic. It would be a self-inflicted wound the company might not recover from. The board would vote you out by morning." "She's right," Carter said. "We need a surgical strike. We need to know the exact target." The break came from an unexpected place. Brenda Walsh. Isolated, scared, and realizing the extremist group saw her as a disposable pawn rather than a hero, she had a moment of clarity, or perhaps of sheer self-preservation. Using a burner phone, she sent a desperate text to a number Anya had quietly leaked to her as a secure line. Asterisk, they're not after the planes. They're after the money. The vault. Asterisk, the Sky financial vault wasn't a physical location. It was a code name for the proprietary algorithmic trading system that managed the company's massive cash reserves and fuel hedging. the lifeblood of the airline. If compromised, it could lose billions in minutes, bankrupting the company before the market even opened. David's team descended on the secure server room. The head of IT security was pale. "Sir, we've detected a sophisticated worm. It's been dormant in our system for weeks, planted by Renshaw. It's designed to trigger a sell-off of all our assets and execute fraudulent purchases that would funnel everything into offshore accounts. It's set to activate at 4:30 a.m., right before pre-market trading begins." It was 3:45 a.m. "Can you stop it?" David asked, his voice steady despite the vice tightening around his chest. "We're trying. It's constantly mutating. It's like trying to catch smoke." David looked at the countdown clock on the wall. 44 minutes. He thought of Renshaw's smug face, of the extremists who thought they could dismantle his life's work out of sheer hatred. He wouldn't let them. There was always another way. "Pull the plug." David commanded. "Sir." Literally. "Initiate a full manual disconnect from the global financial network. Isolate the entire system. Now." The head of IT stared at him in horror. "Mr. Thorne, that's the nuclear option. It will take our entire financial operations offline. Payments, payroll, fuel purchases, everything will freeze. The market will see it as a catastrophic failure. The stock will plummet." "A plummeting stock can be recovered," David said, his voice like iron. "A bankrupt company cannot." "Do it." As technicians scrambled to execute the order, David turned to Carter. "It's time to go public. We can't stay on defense." At 4:15 a.m., from a makeshift studio in the Orisky headquarters, David Thorne went live across every major news network. He looked tired but resolute, the city's pre-dawn sky a dark canvas behind him. "I am speaking to you tonight because my company, Orisky Airlines, is under attack," he began. "Not from a competitor, but from a network of hate that infiltrated our ranks." He laid out the entire story. He showed the photo of Brenda at the rally. He revealed Mark Renshaw's betrayal and the attempted kidnapping of his son. And he explained, in stark terms, the cyber attack that was at that very moment being neutralized. This was not just an attempt to ruin me. It was an attempt to destroy a company that employs tens of thousands of people from every background and creed, all because a small group of bigots could not stand the sight of my black son sitting in first class. He looked directly into the camera, his gaze piercing. "So, to the people behind this, I have a message. You failed. You thought your hatred made you strong, but it made you predictable. And you thought I was just a businessman who would play by your rules. You were wrong." As he spoke, federal agents, working on evidence provided by Carter all night, moved in simultaneous raids, arresting 3 of the group's key financial backers. The broadcast was a seismic event. The narrative flipped in an instant. Hashtag I Sent with Thorne began trending globally. Passengers voiced support. The board, which had been ready to oust him, now sent messages of unanimous backing. By 8 a.m., the immediate threat was over. The system was isolated, the worm contained. The company was wounded but alive. Exhausted, David returned to his penthouse. Leo was waiting for him, having watched the broadcast. "You were brave, Dad," Leo said. "We both were, son," David replied, pulling him into a hug. But as the sun rose over the city, Carter called. His voice was heavy. "We traced the money behind the hackers, David. It's bigger than we thought. The initial funds were routed through a shell corporation, one primarily owned by our biggest competitor, OmniJet Airways." David froze. This wasn't just a hate group. It was corporate warfare, using racism as a weapon. The revelation hit David Thorne with the force of a physical blow. OmniJet Airways. For years, they had been Orisky's bitterest rival, engaging in brutal price wars and aggressive lobbying. But this was an act of corporate terrorism. They hadn't just tried to steal market share. They had weaponized bigotry to try and burn his company to the ground. David stood at his floor-to-ceiling window, the city sprawling beneath him. The initial fury cooled, hardening into a cold, diamond-edged resolve. A public accusation would be useless. OmniJet would deny everything, and would evolve into a messy, spectacle. No, he needed a different kind of victory. one that would be absolute. He assembled his most trusted advisors, Anya Carter and his shrewd, unflappable chief financial officer, Ben. We don't expose them, David stated, his voice calm and final. We acquire them. The room fell silent. Ben was the first to speak. David, OmniJet is nearly our size. A hostile takeover would be the biggest in aviation history. The financial and regulatory hurdles. It's a monumental risk. It's not a risk, it's a target, David countered. They've overextended themselves financing this little war against us. Their debt-to-equity ratio must be a house of cards. Carter, I need you to find their pressure points. Every safety violation they've swept under the rug. Every environmental corner they've cut. Every shaky loan. Anya, we start a whisper campaign. Let the market know OmniJet is unstable. Ben, you quietly start buying up their debt. The plan was audacious. While OmniJet CEO, the notoriously arrogant Robert Vance, was still celebrating what he thought was Orskai's impending collapse, David's counteroffensive began. Anya's whisper campaign was a masterpiece of corporate intrigue. Strategic leaks to financial blogs hinted at OmniJet's liquidity crisis. Concerned analysts began asking tough questions on earnings calls. The stock began a slow, steady decline. Meanwhile, Carter's team, now working with federal investigators who were furious at having been used as pawns in OmniJet's scheme, unearthed a treasure trove of malfeasance. Falsified maintenance records, bribes of foreign officials for route approvals, and evidence of systematic safety violations. They held this evidence like a sword, ready to drop it at the precise moment. The final piece fell into place when Ben's team successfully acquired a controlling portion of OmniJet's staggering debt at a deep discount. David placed the call himself. Robert, David said, his voice pleasant, as if greeting an old friend. Thorne, Robert Vance's voice was a smug drawl. Calling to discuss surrender terms? I hear your stock is still recovering. Not quite, David replied. I'm calling to discuss yours. You see, as of 9:02 this morning, Oraskai became the primary creditor of OmniJet Airways. We now own your debt, and we're calling it in. All of it. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. You're bluffing, Vance finally choked out. I've emailed you the documentation. You have 48 hours to arrange payment of $17 billion. Alternatively, David continued, his tone turned to ice, you can accept my buyout offer of $1 per share, a fraction of its value, but more than you'll get from bankruptcy court, which is where you're headed when I reveal the falsified maintenance logs to the FAA and the DOJ. Your choice. It was a checkmate. Vance had none of David's resilience, none of his strategic patience. Faced with total financial and legal annihilation, he crumbled. The news broke like a thunderclap. Oraskai acquires OmniJet in historic merger. The business world was stunned. There was one final piece of business. At the press conference announcing the merger, David stood alone at the podium. He spoke of a new, unified future for the airline. And then he turned to the real reason it had all happened. This journey began with an act of ugliness. A flight attendant who looked at my son and saw someone who didn't belong. He said, the room hanging on his every word. It revealed a sickness, not just in one person, but in the systems we take for granted. It tried to destroy us. It failed, but it also taught us something profound. He paused, letting the silence build. And so, the first official act of our new, combined airline will be the creation of the Leo Thorne Foundation. Its mission, to provide full scholarship and mentorship to young people of color pursuing careers in aviation, from pilots to engineers to executives. We are not just changing an airline. We are changing who gets to decide who belongs in the sky. The applause was deafening. Later that evening, David stood with Leo on their terrace, watching the lights of the city twinkle on. Below them, an Oraskai jet, now emblazoned with the tagline, "The future flies with us," climbed gracefully into the twilight. It's over, Dad, isn't it? Leo asked, his voice quiet. David put his arm around his son's shoulders, pulling him close. The fight is, son, but the work is just beginning. He looked out at the horizon, at the endless expanse of sky now a little more within reach for everyone. The storm had passed, and in its wake, it cleared the air. leaving behind a future brighter and more inclusive than the one it had tried to destroy. If you have stayed with us to this point, then subscribe and share to join our fight for a just world. Stay tuned for what's next. The end.